The clinking of champagne glasses, the muted roar of conversation, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive ambition. But these were the hallmarks of corporate events, a personal hell I routinely found myself trapped in. I harbored a profound dislike for these gatherings, seeing them as elaborate masquerades where genuine connection was sacrificed at the altar of networking. Every smile felt plastic, every handshake calculated, every word a carefully rehearsed line in a play I wanted no part of. Yet, here I was again, suited up, pressed into service, a silent sentinel in a room full of strangers pretending to be friends. My wife, Olivia Sterling, on the other hand, thrived in this environment. It was her world, a glittering stage where she shone. For her, these galas were crucial, indispensable rungs on the ladder of her burgeoning career. "You have to come, Ethan," she would insist, her voice laced with a blend of necessity and veiled exasperation. "It's important for my visibility, for Haven Capital." In the high-stakes world of the financial district, I was simply Olivia's husband, a convenient appendage to her rising star, my own past achievements deliberately eclipsed by her present trajectory. It was a role I played, not out of passion, but out of a deeper, more complicated devotion. It had been 5 years since I first met Olivia. I had just sold my first company, Orion Tech, a venture that had quietly, almost unexpectedly, turned me into a multimillionaire. The ink was barely dry on the contracts, my pockets heavier than I'd ever imagined, and my mind buzzing with the thrill of creation and the quiet satisfaction of a dream realized. Then I met Olivia. She was a hurricane of passion and intellect, a hungry professional with eyes that sparkled with fierce determination. She spoke not of personal gain, but of systemic change, of reshaping the financial world into something more equitable, more accessible. Her vision was not just compelling, it was infectious. I was captivated, not by her beauty alone, though she possessed an undeniable elegance, but by the sheer force of her conviction. She articulated a world where finance wasn't a labyrinth for the elite, but a tool for empowerment. It resonated with a part of me that had always sought to build things that mattered. Listening to her, I felt a familiar flicker of inspiration, a desire to contribute to something greater. It was then, in a moment of audacious decision, that I secretly bought Haven Capital, the very firm she worked for, the one she spoke of with such reverence and ambition. My intention was simple: to give her the platform, the resources, the unshakable foundation to make her vision a reality, without her ever knowing the invisible hand guiding her ascent. My wealth, my ownership, my past entrepreneurial successes, all of it I kept a closely guarded secret. It wasn't about manipulation, it was about authenticity. I wanted Olivia to love me for who I was, for the quiet man who listened intently to her dreams, who supported her emotionally, who shared her laughter and comforted her frustrations. I dreaded the thought that my money might cloud her judgment, that she might see me as a resource rather than a partner, or worse, that she might mistake gratitude for genuine affection. This secret became a heavy cloak I wore, a constant internal monologue of what-ifs and unspoken truths. For years, I perfected the art of playing the supportive husband. I became adept at the polite smile, the understanding nod, the occasional anodyne comment that wouldn't overshadow her. Meanwhile, beneath that unassuming facade, my own mind never ceased. While she was immersed in Haven Capital, I was quietly building new ventures, turning fledgling ideas into multi-million-dollar realities. These new endeavors were my secret garden, a place where my true capabilities and ambitions could flourish, unseen by Olivia, unheard by the world that knew me only as her shadow. The irony of it all was a constant companion, a private joke only I was privy to. Tonight, the Grand Sterling Gala was in full swing. Olivia emerged from our dressing room, a vision in a tailored navy gown that hugged her figure with understated grace. Her dark hair was pulled back, emphasizing the sharp lines of her jaw and the intensity in her eyes. It was a transformation I knew well. The woman who had shared her vulnerability with me at home, the one who sometimes wrestled with self-doubt, vanished. In her place stood Haven Capital Olivia, sharp, confident, radiating an aura of impeccable professionalism. She was ready for battle, ready to conquer. As we made our way to the car, Olivia recounted her pre-gala conversations. Arthur Blackburn specifically asked if you were coming, she mused, adjusting a stray curl. Arthur, the CEO of Haven Capital, a man whose dismissive attitude towards me in previous encounters had been almost comical, now suddenly interested? It raised an eyebrow, a tiny flag of curiosity in my otherwise placid demeanor. Olivia didn't seem to notice the underlying strangeness. She was too focused on the task at hand. Just before we stepped out onto the red carpet, as the flashbulbs began to pop and the murmur of anticipation grew, she turned to me. Her hand briefly touched my arm, her eyes scanning my attire for any imperfections. Then, with a sigh that I knew all too well, a small, almost imperceptible expulsion of air that carried years of unspoken instruction, she murmured, "Don't be you." It wasn't malicious, not overtly cruel, but it was a clear signal, a reminder of the expected role. My presence was required, but my personality was not. I was to be an accessory, not a participant. And so I fell into my routine. My face adopted a pleasant, neutral expression. My hand extended automatically to shake those of countless executives, investors, and potential clients. I nodded at their stories, even when they droned on about quarterly reports or market trends that held no genuine interest for me. I laughed politely at unfunny jokes, my eyes scanning the room, absorbing details, analyzing power dynamics, all while maintaining the facade of the amiable, slightly detached husband. I played my part perfectly, a master of deception, waiting for the moment when the curtain would inevitably fall, revealing the true performance beneath. 2 hours felt like an eternity. 2 hours of polite smiles, meaningless chatter, and the cloying air of manufactured camaraderie. I had nursing my third whiskey, the amber liquid offering a slight buffer against the grating artificiality of the event. Each sip brought me closer to the moment I could politely extract myself, retrieve Olivia, and make our escape back to the quiet sanctuary of our home. I was mentally ticking off the minutes, planning my exit strategy, when Olivia's hand found my arm. Her grip was firm, purposeful. "Come on, Ethan," she said, her voice bright. "There's someone I want you to meet." She steered me with practiced ease through a small cluster of people, her movements fluid and confident. We stopped before a man with slicked back hair and a smug smirk already etched on his face. "Ethan, this is Brendan Keller from our legal department," Olivia announced, her tone effervescent. My internal alarm bells immediately began to clang. Brendan, the name alone was enough to conjure a wave of unpleasant memories. I remembered him from a previous firm event, a minor encounter that had left a surprisingly bitter taste. He had been overly boastful about his new Porsche, then subtly, almost imperceptibly, condescending when he'd realized I was Olivia's husband. There had been an almost palpable air of disbelief, a silent question in his eyes. How did someone like Olivia end up with someone like him? Brendan extended a hand, his grip aggressive, a deliberate assertion of dominance. He squeezed harder than necessary, holding my hand hostage for a beat too long. His smile didn't reach his eyes, which glinted with a familiar, unsettling amusement. "Well, well, well," he drawled, his voice carrying just a little too much. The elusive husband emerges from his cave. The cave was, of course, a thinly veiled jab at my perceived lack of a prominent career in their esteemed corporate world. It was a calculated insult delivered with the casual air of a friendly greeting. Before I could formulate a response, Brendan continued, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Olivia mentioned you were between jobs these days." The words hung in the air, a carefully constructed trap. I knew for a fact that Olivia had never said any such thing. We had never discussed my professional life in that way, and certainly not to her colleagues. It was a fabrication, a deliberate misrepresentation designed to paint me in a specific, less than flattering light. My eyes flickered to Olivia, a silent question passing between us. Before I could utter a word, Olivia jumped in, a little too quickly, her voice a shade too bright. "Oh, Brendan, you know Ethan's just been consulting in the tech sector, keeping things flexible." Her words, meant to be a defense, only cemented the lie, adding another layer to the charade. Flexible was corporate code for unemployed, or at best, dabbling. She was fabricating my reality, not just for Brendan, but for the entire group that had now subtly shifted their attention to our conversation, drawn in by Brendan's loud pronouncements. A slow burn ignited within me, a familiar heat rising in my chest. This wasn't just a slight, it was a deliberate undermining, a public degradation. Brendan, emboldened by Olivia's almost apologetic clarification, leaned in conspiratorially, though his voice remained loud enough for everyone to hear. Ah, consulting. Like my brother-in-law who's been consulting with his couch for the past 6 months. A ripple of laughter spread through the small cluster of people around us. It was a cruel jab, designed to elicit a reaction, to diminish me further. I kept my expression neutral, though my jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then, a woman from the group, the director of marketing whom I vaguely recognized, chimed in, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "Oh, how long have you been exploring options, Ethan?" The phrase exploring options was another corporate euphemism, a polite way of asking how long I'd been out of work. The question was a clear signal that the mockery was intensifying, turning from subtle jabs to overt ridicule. Brendan, seeing his audience engaged, decided to go for the kill. He clapped me on the shoulder, a condescending pat that felt more like a shove. His voice boomed, cutting through the ambient hum of the gala. "So, tell us, Ethan," he said, his smile widening into a predatory grin. "How does it feel to be a loser?" The word hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. He wasn't just implying I was unemployed, he was outright stating I was a failure, a burden, a man living off his wife's success. The room, which had been a low hum of conversation, suddenly went quiet. All eyes were on me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for the inevitable public meltdown. I froze. The insult landed like a physical blow, yet I stood perfectly still, my composure unbreaking. My eyes, however, instinctively darted to Olivia. This was it. This was the moment. The line had been crossed. I expected anger, indignation, a fierce defense from my wife. What I got instead was a sound, a small, almost imperceptible noise that shattered my expectations and solidified the slow burn into an inferno. Olivia emitted a nervous titter, a brief, unmistakable laugh that was quickly stifled, but not before it echoed in the sudden silence. It was a laugh of embarrassment, perhaps, or perhaps a desperate attempt to diffuse the tension. But to me, it was a betrayal. It confirmed everything. Brendan, sensing blood in the water, saw Olivia's reaction as an invitation. He leaned in again, his voice now a stage whisper that carried through the hushed group. "I mean, it must be nice, right? Having a sugar mama providing for everything. What do you even do all day?" The implication was clear, crude, and devastating. I was a kept man, a parasitic husband. I looked past Brendan, and there, across the small gathering, I saw Arthur Blackburn, the CEO of Haven Capital, the man who had supposedly asked after me, watching the scene unfold with a faint smirk playing on his lips. His expression wasn't one of disapproval, but of quiet amusement. My gaze returned to Olivia. This was her last chance. A look, a word, anything, to acknowledge the humiliation, to stand by me. But she avoided my gaze, her eyes fixed on some distant point over my shoulder. She lifted her champagne glass, took a slow, deliberate sip, and remained utterly, devastatingly silent. In that moment, her inaction spoke volumes. It confirmed her stance, her tacit agreement with Brendan's narrative, her willingness to sacrifice my dignity for her perceived professional standing. The slow burn coalesced into a cold, hard resolve. In that agonizing silence, punctuated only by the distant hum of the gala, something inside me snapped. 5 years of carefully constructed silence, of hidden wealth, of compartmentalized identities, all came crashing down. The invisible walls I had erected around my true self, around my true achievements, crumbled into dust. The quiet, supportive husband, the consulting tech professional, the man Olivia had dismissed with a sigh, that facade evaporated, leaving only Ethan Vance, a man who had just been publicly humiliated by his wife's colleague, with her tacit approval. The whiskey glass in my hand felt suddenly too light, too flimsy to contain the tempest brewing within me. I carefully, deliberately, set it down on a passing server's tray, the gentle clink resonating loudly in the sudden quiet. My voice, when it came, was steady, surprisingly calm, even pleasant. I looked at Brendan Keller, whose smug smirk was still firmly in place, anticipating a meek retreat, a mumbled apology, further self-abasement. That's a fascinating question, Brendan, I said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. How does it feel to be a loser? Brendan's smirk widened, his eyes gleaming with triumphant malice. He probably thought I was repeating his insult, internalizing it. He leaned forward, ready to savor the moment, but I didn't let him. Instead, I shifted my gaze, turning slowly to Arthur Blackburn, the CEO, who was still smirking, enjoying the spectacle with detached amusement. The change in my focus, the unexpected direct address, seemed to catch him off guard. Arthur, I continued, my voice still light, conversational. Perhaps you could answer that question better than I could. How does it feel, I paused, letting the words sink in, to run a company that's actually owned by a loser like me? Arthur's smirk faltered. The color drained from his face with an almost theatrical speed, leaving him looking ashen, stunned. His eyes, moments ago filled with a patronizing amusement, now widened with a dawning comprehension, a flicker of panic. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The shift in atmosphere was instantaneous, palpable. The general confusion in the small group surrounding us morphed into something akin to horror. I didn't wait for him to respond. The moment of revelation had arrived, and I leaned into it. You see, I explained, my voice carrying easily across the hushed group, I've been Haven Capital's largest shareholder for quite some time now. Approximately 75%, actually. Acquired discreetly, of course, through various shell corporations over the past 5 years. The words hung in the air, heavy and shocking. Olivia, who had been holding her champagne glass to her lips, now dropped it. The delicate crystal shattered against the polished marble floor with a sharp, sickening crack that echoed through the stunned silence. Her eyes, wide and disbelieving, were fixed on me, a mixture of confusion, dawning horror, and something akin to betrayal twisting her features. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. The scattered conversations across the gala died down, drawn in by the sudden, dramatic shift in our small circle. Arthur, his face now a sickly shade of white, stammered, his voice hoarse. But our largest shareholder is Orion Holdings. That's public knowledge. I simply smiled, a genuine, unforced smile this time, utterly devoid of the forced politeness I'd maintained all evening. Precisely, I finished for him, my voice cool and precise. Orion Holdings, a subsidiary of Vance Ventures. And Vance Ventures, as it happens, is wholly owned by me. With a flourish, I reached into the inner pocket of my impeccably tailored suit jacket. I withdrew a business card, crisp and stark, and extended it toward Arthur, who seemed incapable of moving. Ethan Vance, I announced, my voice clear and authoritative, no longer the supportive husband. CEO of Vance Ventures and, as of this moment, majority owner of Haven Capital. It's been a pleasure to finally introduce myself properly. I then turned back to Brendan, whose face was now ashen, his smug grin completely vanished, replaced by a look of abject terror. His eyes darted between me and Arthur, understanding slowly dawning. The man he had just publicly ridiculed, the loser he had so gleefully insulted, was his boss, my boss, the owner of the very company he worked for. I met his terrified gaze, my own eyes devoid of anger, simply a quiet, calculating satisfaction. So, to answer your question, Brendan, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a knife. Being a loser feels remarkably like watching a man insult his boss without realizing it. The words hung in the air, a final crushing blow. The collective gasp from the surrounding group was almost audible. Arthur looked like he was about to faint. Brendan looked utterly destroyed. I glanced at Olivia, her face a mask of shock and bewilderment. The broken glass at her feet a stark symbol of the shattering of her carefully constructed reality. I think I've had enough socializing for one evening, Olivia, I stated, my voice devoid of warmth, of any lingering affection. I have an early meeting with my lawyers tomorrow. Plenty to discuss regarding Haven Capital, I imagine. I didn't wait for a response, didn't spare another glance. I turned on my heel, the quiet confidence in my stride a stark contrast to the deferential shuffle I had maintained all evening. As I began to walk away, making my way through the now frozen, silently staring crowd, I paused, turning my head slightly, just enough to catch Arthur Blackburn's terrified gaze. My voice dropped, becoming a low, dangerous murmur that only he would likely hear, though its impact resonated through the shocked silence. "Oh, and Arthur," I added, a hint of steel in my tone, "we should definitely discuss those creative accounting practices you've been using for the offshore accounts. I'm quite curious about those." And with that parting shot, I left the Grand Sterling Gala, leaving behind a wake of stunned silence, shattered glass, and utterly broken illusions. The heavy oak doors of the Grand Sterling Ballroom closed behind me with a satisfying thud, instantly muffling the sudden explosion of voices and gasps that had erupted in my wake. The opulent corridor, usually bustling with socialites and power brokers, was blessedly empty, offering a sanctuary of quiet. The air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the overheated drama I had just left behind. For a moment, I simply stood there, breathing in the calm, letting the last vestiges of the charade shed from my shoulders. My hand instinctively went to my pocket, pulling out my phone. A few taps, and I heard the familiar ring on the other end. "Sophia," I said, my voice crisp, devoid of any lingering emotion from the gala. "It's done. You can initiate Plan B tomorrow morning first thing." On the other end, Sophia Hayes' voice was as calm and collected as ever. "Understood, Mr. Vance. Everything is ready. The board members have been discreetly notified of an emergency meeting. The legal paperwork for Arthur's immediate dismissal and investigation is prepared. All the evidence has been meticulously documented and sealed, ready for distribution." Sophia, she had been my eyes and ears inside Haven Capital for the past 2 years. A brilliant financial analyst, sharp as a tack, and utterly principled, she had been systematically overlooked by Arthur's boys' club mentality. While Olivia ascended the ranks, oblivious to the deeper currents, Sophia had been toiling in the trenches, her talent often overshadowed, her insights frequently dismissed. It was that very marginalization that made her perfect for my purposes. She saw things, observed patterns, and possessed a quiet determination that few noticed until it was too late. It was Sophia who had first stumbled upon Arthur's carefully concealed embezzlement scheme. She hadn't initially known who to trust, who to turn to within the firm without risking her career. But through a series of anonymous tips I had subtly orchestrated, she eventually found her way to an obscure email address, mine. From then on, she had meticulously documented every fraudulent transaction, every offshore account, every shell company Arthur had used to siphon funds from Haven Capital. Her files were a damning chronicle of his greed, a testament to her thoroughness. As I walked out of the Grand Sterling into the crisp night air, a profound sense of lightness settled over me. It was a feeling I hadn't experienced in years, a lifting of the burden of pretense. The charade was finally over. The complex, interwoven tapestry of lies and half-truths I had woven to protect Olivia and her dream had finally unraveled, and with it the quiet agony of playing a part that was not truly mine. I bypassed my penthouse apartment, knowing Olivia would likely be there, waiting, demanding answers. That confrontation could wait. My priority was elsewhere. I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address in Midtown, a towering skyscraper that housed the true seat of my operations, Vance Ventures headquarters. Occupying the top 3 floors, it was a minimalist marvel of glass and steel, a testament to efficiency and understated power. This was my world, my true domain, far removed from the glittering artifice of the financial district's corporate galas. As I stepped into the hushed lobby, Frank, the night security guard, nodded respectfully. "Evening, Mr. Vance," he greeted, his voice low and professional. The simple acknowledgement, the proper address, was a small but significant comfort. Here, I was not Olivia's husband. I was simply Mr. Vance. My office was exactly as I liked it. Minimalist, yet incredibly comfortable. A sprawling dark wood desk dominated the room, facing a wall of glass that offered a breathtaking panorama of the city lights. I settled into my leather chair, the quiet hum of the building a soothing backdrop. I pulled up Sophia's detailed files on my monitor. The sheer audacity of Arthur's scheme unfolded before me. Layers of shell corporations, fabricated invoices, dummy accounts in obscure tax havens. It was a masterpiece of corporate malfeasance, meticulously cataloged by Sophia's diligent work. As I reviewed the documents, a deeper, more unsettling realization settled over me. Haven Capital, the firm I had bought to help Olivia achieve her vision of a better financial world, had strayed so far from its original mission. Under Arthur's subtle influence and Olivia's increasingly narrow focus on career advancement, it had become another cog in the very machine she had once vowed to dismantle. And Olivia herself, she had changed with it. The passionate, idealistic woman I had met 5 years ago had become something harder, colder, more concerned with appearances and corporate climbing than with the ideals she once championed. She had become, in essence, what she once despised. My phone, lying silently on the desk, suddenly buzzed to life, vibrating with increasing urgency. I glanced at the screen. Olivia. A torrent of frantic texts poured in, one after another, each more agitated than the last. "Where are you? We need to talk. Now." "What the hell was that tonight? Ethan, you're being ridiculous. How could you do this to me?" I ignored them. My fingers, instead of replying, moved with purpose across the keyboard. By 3 a.m., I had sent out a series of highly encrypted emails to key legal and financial contacts, detailing the next steps. I had briefed my personal security team, ensuring Arthur Blackburn wouldn't be able to access any Haven Capital assets, and I had arranged for the secure distribution of Sophia's evidence packets to the appropriate authorities and the Haven Capital Board. The night was long but productive. The stage was set for a new dawn. The story is far from over, and the drama is only just beginning. If you're finding yourself gripped by this unexpected turn of events, remember to like this video, share it with anyone who loves a good tale of comeuppance, and subscribe to make sure you don't miss a single part of what happens next. Now let's pick up right where we left off. The penthouse was dark save for the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I let myself in quietly, the click of the lock echoing in the stillness. Even before I saw her, I felt Olivia's presence, an almost palpable tension in the air, like an electrical charge. I knew she'd be waiting. This was inevitable. I found her in the living room, a solitary figure amidst the sprawling luxury. She was still in the navy evening dress she'd worn to the gala, though it was now rumpled, a stark contrast to the impeccable image she'd presented earlier. Her makeup was smudged, dark tracks visible beneath her red-rimmed eyes. Beside her, on the pristine glass coffee table, sat a half-empty bottle of expensive Merlot, its dark contents mirroring the mood. She didn't look up immediately, her gaze fixed on something unseen. When she finally did, her eyes were swollen, heavy with unshed tears and a raw, bewildered anger. There was no preamble, no polite greeting. Her voice was hoarse, a fragile whisper that barely cut through the silence. "Is it true?" she asked, the question hanging in the air, thick with disbelief. I didn't hesitate. There was no point in prolonging it. "Every word," I confirmed, my voice calm, steady, and utterly devoid of emotion. 75% of it. Yes. It's all true." The confirmation seemed to deflate her further, if that were possible. She reeled back slightly as if physically struck. "But why?" Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you ever say anything? To me? Your wife? This small detail?" The irony of her calling my majority ownership of her company a small detail was not lost on me. My composure remained, but my voice sharpened, a cold edge replacing the earlier neutrality. "The person who laughed when her colleagues called me a loser?" The words were a direct hit, aimed precisely at the wound she had inflicted. Olivia flinched, a visible recoil as if I had physically struck her. She immediately shook her head, her voice rising in a desperate protest. "No, I didn't laugh. How could you even think that?" "You did," I insisted, my gaze unwavering. "A nervous titter, perhaps, quickly suppressed, but a laugh nonetheless. And it told me everything I needed to know about how you truly see me. A convenient prop, a figurehead to ignore, a source of embarrassment to be explained away." "It was a nervous laugh, Ethan," she pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. I was caught off guard. Brendan is an ass, you know that. I was just trying to diffuse the situation, not side with him. I turned away from her, walking towards the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering tapestry of the city below. The lights of the distant buildings seemed to shimmer, their reflections superimposed but separate, distinct yet intertwined. It seemed appropriate, a visual metaphor for our lives, once so intertwined, now so fundamentally separate. Do you even remember why I bought Haven Capital, Olivia? I asked, my voice softer now, tinged with a weariness that went bone deep. I didn't wait for her to answer, knowing she probably couldn't. I bought it because of you, because of your passion, your vision. You spoke of a better world, of bringing good to the financial sector, of empowering people, not just profiting from them. That fire, that idealism, it captivated me. I wanted to give you the resources, the platform, to make that vision a reality. Olivia weakly protested, her voice barely audible. I still do. I finally turned back to face her, a bitter smile playing on my lips. No, you don't, Olivia. You don't anymore. You got lost in the corporate climb, in the endless pursuit of prestige and titles. You became so focused on being Haven Capital Olivia that you forgot what Olivia Sterling stood for. Now you're just another shark swimming in the same polluted waters you once vowed to clean. And worse, my voice hardened, you're helping Arthur Blackburn steal from the very company you claim to care about. Her face, already pale, drained of any remaining color. Her eyes widened in genuine shock, a flicker of fear mixed with confusion. What are you talking about? She whispered, her voice barely a breath. Offshore accounts? Fake consultancy contracts? An embezzlement scheme? I don't know anything about that. I studied her face, searching for any sign of genuine remorse or complicity. There was a flicker of guilt in her eyes, a shadow of unease, suggesting she might have suspected something, perhaps willfully ignored it, but not outright participated. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. Arthur is out, I announced, my voice firm, leaving no room for argument. As of this morning, he's suspended pending a full investigation, and we're not stopping there. We're cleaning house, Olivia, top to bottom. Her eyes blazed with a sudden, desperate anger, overriding her shock. You can't do that, she cried, rising unsteadily to her feet, knocking the wine bottle over in the process. It rolled harmlessly across the plush rug, but the sound was sharp in the quiet room. You can't just barge in and dismantle everything. This is my career, my life. Oh, but I can, Olivia, I stated, my voice cutting through her desperate outburst. And I will. Haven Capital will return to its original mission, the one you championed when I first met you. It will be a company built on integrity, not on backroom deals and corporate deceit. She swayed slightly, her hand gripping the back of the sofa for support. Her eyes, still swollen, narrowed with a desperate anger. Is this really about that, Ethan? She demanded, her voice rising in pitch. Or is this just about you punishing me for one stupid laugh? One stupid, nervous laugh. I studied her, really studied her, the woman I had loved enough to secretly buy an entire company for, the woman who was now almost unrecognizable beneath the layers of ambition and resentment. The question was almost laughable in its self-centeredness. No, Olivia, I said, my voice heavy with a profound sadness that surprised even me. This isn't about you or us or your laugh. Not anymore. This is about doing what's right. For the company, for its employees, for the clients who trusted it. Doing what's right, she scoffed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. By destroying everything we've built, a humorless laugh escaped my lips. What we've built, Olivia? You didn't even know I owned the company. What exactly do you think we built? Her face contorted with fury. It's your ego, isn't it? She spat, her voice shaking. You couldn't stand it, could you? My success, that I was making it on my own without you. You had to come in and make it all about you, didn't you? Had to take credit for everything. If I cared about credit, I countered, my voice dangerously low, I would have taken it 5 years ago. I would have put my name on the building, sat in the CEO's chair, and soaked up every ounce of recognition. But I didn't. I stayed silent, worked in the shadows. all because I believed it would make you happy, would allow you to achieve your dreams. I was happy, she hissed, tears now streaming down her smudged cheeks, until you decided to blow everything up. How am I supposed to face anyone at work now? How am I supposed to explain this? Her concern was not for the company, not for the ethical implications, but for her reputation, her professional image. Your reputation, I pointed out, a cold logic overriding my emotions, was built on a foundation of lies, Olivia. Not even your lies, mine. I built it for you brick by brick, while you were busy climbing a ladder I had secretly placed for you. In a flash, her hand flew up, striking me hard across the face. The sharp sting momentarily blurred my vision, but I didn't flinch, didn't move an inch. I simply looked at her, at the raw, venomous anger contorting her features, and saw a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Get out," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Just get out of my apartment." "My apartment, Olivia," I gently reminded her, my voice soft but firm, as I touched my stinging cheek. "This penthouse, this view, the car in the garage, the clothes you're wearing, all of it provided by the loser you married." At that, her anger crumbled, giving way to a different kind of display. The tears continued, but now they were accompanied by a calculated tremor in her voice, a sudden, desperate plea. She reached out, grasping my arm. "No, Ethan, please. Don't say that. We can fix this. We can work this out. We were always a team, remember?" She squeezed my arm, her touch suddenly desperate, pleading. I gently pulled my arm away. "That laugh tonight," I said, my voice quiet. "It wasn't meaningless. It was revealing. And it wasn't just tonight, Olivia. It was years of small shifts, tiny compromises, a slow erosion of the woman I fell in love with." "I'm filing for divorce," I announced, the words feeling heavy, yet necessary. "The papers will be delivered tomorrow morning. I'm keeping the company. You can have the penthouse, the cars, whatever else you want from the shared assets. It's yours." She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, the calculated tears momentarily forgotten. "Divorce?" she whispered, the word a raw, disbelieving sound. "Just like that? After everything?" "It was already gone, Olivia," I stated flatly, looking at her with a profound weariness. "It has been for years. We just didn't admit it." A sneer twisted her lips, a flash of her inherent bitterness breaking through. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat. "You think you can just discard me and move on with your little analyst, Sophia, is it?" "There's nothing between me and Sophia," I said, my voice steady, brushing aside the desperate attempt at deflection. "She's a brilliant analyst who simply did her job. Something Arthur Blackburn seems to have forgotten." "I'll ruin you," she threatened, her eyes blazing. "I'll tell everyone what a manipulative, deceitful bastard you are. How you spied on me, controlled my career." I met her gaze, utterly unfazed. "Go ahead, Olivia, but remember what I said about Arthur's offshore accounts. The authorities will be very interested in any information you might have regarding the fraud, information that might put you in a difficult position if you were involved." The implication hung heavy in the air. I turned towards our bedroom, pulling a small carry-on bag from the closet. My movements were deliberate, efficient. I packed a few essentials, a change of clothes, my laptop. As I zipped the bag, I turned back to her. "Don't attend the board meeting tomorrow, Olivia," I advised, my voice a simple instruction, devoid of emotion. "It won't go well for you if you do." She stared at me, her face pale, her lips trembling. Am I fired?" she asked, the question barely audible. I looked at her one last time, a ghost of the man who had once loved her standing before the woman she had become. "That," I replied, my voice calm, "depends entirely on whether you were involved in the fraud." "Ethan, please, I do love you." Olivia's desperate cry echoed behind me as I walked out of the penthouse. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The words, once so meaningful, now felt hollow, an empty plea born of panic, not genuine affection. The door clicked shut with a soft, yet utterly final sound, severing the last thread of what we once were. The next morning, the Haven Capital boardroom was a tableau of grim faces and tense silence. 14 board members, arrayed around the polished mahogany table, sat in various states of shock and apprehension. At the head of the table, Arthur Blackburn, his face a mask of bluster and denial, looked profoundly uncomfortable. Sophia Hayes had just concluded her presentation, her voice calm and factual, detailing with devastating precision Arthur's intricate web of fraudulent transactions. The silence that followed her final slide, a meticulous timeline of embezzlement, was heavy, punctuated only by the nervous shifting of chairs. Arthur, true to form, attempted to dismiss the mountain of evidence with a wave of his hand. "These are just minor irregularities, Sophia," he scoffed, his voice betraying a hint of tremor. "Standard business practices, really. You're blowing this completely out of proportion." I leaned forward slightly, my gaze fixed on Arthur. "Standard business practices, Arthur?" I asked mildly, my voice dangerously calm. "Perhaps in your world, but as someone who built a multi-billion-dollar tech company from the ground up, I assure you, funneling company funds into shell corporations and Cayman Islands accounts is decidedly not a standard business practice. It's called fraud." Sophia, with impeccable timing, cut in. She clicked to the next slide, and the large screen behind her illuminated with a series of photographs. Arthur's gleaming yacht anchored in Monaco, a sprawling French villa overlooking the Riviera, a lavish, extravagant wedding that had graced the pages of several society magazines. "These gentlemen and Ms. Harding," Sophia stated, her voice devoid of judgment, simply laying out the facts, "were all acquired or funded using monies funneled from Haven Capital through a series of fake consultancy agreements and offshore accounts. Eleanor Harding, a formidable woman in her late 60s who had served on the board for decades, her eyes sharp and unblinking, fixed her gaze on Arthur. "Is this true, Arthur?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "Did you use company funds to finance your personal extravagances?" Arthur stammered, his face a mottled red. He opened his mouth, then closed it, his silence a resounding confirmation of his guilt. There was no defense left to offer. I cleared my throat, shifting in my seat to address the entire board. "Gentlemen, Ms. Harding," I began, my voice clear and authoritative. "I called this emergency meeting for two primary reasons. Firstly, to address the egregious fraud that has been systematically draining this company, eroding its trust and integrity. And secondly, to chart a new course for Haven Capital, one that returns to its original ethical mission." I then laid out my vision for the company, a focus on transparency, on supporting small businesses and genuine innovation, on rebuilding trust within the financial community. It was a stark departure from the cutthroat, profit-at-all-cost mentality that had pervaded under Arthur's leadership. "I believe Haven Capital can once again be a force for good in the financial world," I concluded. "But to do that, we must remove the cancer that has taken root." I looked around the room, meeting each board member's gaze. "I now ask for your support to remove Arthur Blackburn and any other executives found to be directly involved in these schemes from their positions, effective immediately." The vote was swift and decisive. Hands went up around the table, a clear majority. 9 board members voted to terminate Arthur, with only 3 abstaining and 2 voting against, clearly loyalists who were now deeply compromised. Arthur watched in stunned silence as the verdict was delivered. Within minutes, 2 security personnel, whom I had arranged to be discreetly present, entered the boardroom and escorted a red-faced, sputtering Arthur Blackburn from the room. His reign of corruption was over. As the doors closed behind Arthur, Eleanor Harding turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Mr. Vance," she said, "as the majority shareholder, it is clear you have a strong vision for the future. Will you be stepping into the CEO position yourself?" I shook my head. "No, Ms. Harding. My expertise lies elsewhere, in venture capital and tech innovation. I will remain actively involved, of course, as the owner. But Haven Capital needs a leader who understands its core operations intimately, someone with a clear moral compass and an unwavering commitment to integrity." I paused, then continued. "Therefore, I would like to nominate Sophia Hayes as interim CEO." A ripple of surprise went through the room. Sophia, though brilliant, was a senior analyst, a significant leap from the CEO position. Skepticism flickered on the faces of several board members. "Mr. Vance, with all due respect," one older board member began. Ms. Hayes is an excellent analyst, but CEO is a considerable step up. Her experience, I interrupted, my voice firm, includes meticulously uncovering one of the most significant frauds in this company's history. Her integrity is unimpeachable. She holds an MBA from Wharton and spent several years at Goldman Sachs before joining Haven Capital. Her acumen is precisely what this company needs right now. I turned to Sophia. Sophia, would you be willing to take on this challenge? Sophia, who had been listening intently, her face composed, now nodded, a confident light in her eyes. She stood up, addressing the board with a poise that belied her previous position. She eloquently presented her vision, one that aligned perfectly with mine, emphasizing ethical practices, client trust, and a renewed focus on supporting genuine growth. Her conviction was undeniable. The skepticism in the room began to dissipate, replaced by a grudging respect, then genuine consideration. After a brief discussion, another vote was called. This time, it was for Sophia Hayes to serve as interim CEO for a 6-month trial period, a chance for her to prove her leadership. The vote passed, not with unanimous consent, but with a solid majority that indicated their trust in my judgment and in Sophia's obvious capabilities. After the meeting concluded and the remaining board members began to disperse, Sophia turned to me, a genuine, radiant smile breaking through her usual professional composure. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and gratitude. I don't know what to say." I returned her smile. "You earned this, Sophia, every bit of it." As a gesture of pure, unadulterated excitement, she reached up and placed a quick, warm kiss on my cheek, a spontaneous expression of gratitude that lingered long after she pulled away. The heavy oak door to the Haven Capital boardroom slammed open with a jarring bang, shattering the last vestiges of the meeting's solemn atmosphere. Olivia Sterling stood framed in the doorway, her appearance a stark contrast to the polished professional she typically presented. Her hair was a wild mess, mascara streaking her pale face, and her evening dress now looked like a costume from a discarded play. The carefully constructed facade, which she had maintained for years, was completely shattered, revealing a raw, unhinged fury beneath. "You backstabbing piece of shit!" she shrieked, her eyes blazing as they darted between me and Sophia, who stood quietly by my side. "You too? You think I don't know? You've been having an affair, haven't you, you conniving little analyst?" Before anyone could react, she hurled her expensive leather purse across the room. It sailed past Sophia's head, narrowly missing her, and crashed into a glass display case, shattering a prestigious corporate award into 1,000 gleaming pieces. The sound was deafening in the sudden silence that followed. I immediately stepped between Olivia and Sophia, my posture calm but firm. "That's enough, Olivia," I stated, my voice low and even, cutting through the echoes of the crash. "You're embarrassing yourself." But she was beyond reason. She launched into a full-blown public meltdown, her voice growing shriller, exposing personal details, fabricating narratives. "He's a control freak with daddy issues. Always has been. That's why he bought the company, to control me, just like he controls everyone else." I signaled to the 2 security guards I had stationed outside the door. "Clear the room," I instructed calmly. The remaining board members, who were looking utterly mortified, quickly filed out, leaving only me, Olivia, and the 2 stoic security personnel. Olivia, now with a smaller, captive audience, continued her tirade, weaving a tangled web of accusations. She began to speak of my first wife, a phantom woman who never existed, and other women like Chloe and Natalie, names I didn't even recognize. It was a desperate, unhinged attempt to wound, to discredit, to grasp at any perceived weakness. I listened for a moment, letting her exhaust herself. Then I cut her off. My voice was calm, yet it carried an undeniable weight. "Chloe and Natalie are figments of your imagination, Olivia," I said, just like the man you pretended I was for years. "But since we're airing dirty laundry, perhaps we should discuss your past. My research into your career wasn't limited to Haven Capital. I know your first major promotion at Hudson Financial, the one you always boasted about, came after you started sleeping with your then-married boss, Robert Finch." Her face, already pale, went completely slack with shock. The color drained from it, leaving her looking utterly ghost-like. She stared at me, her mouth agape, utterly speechless. She hadn't known I knew. I had known from the very beginning, but I had chosen to believe in her, chosen to believe she had changed, grown beyond that person. I knew your history, Olivia, I continued, my voice now tinged with a cold disappointment. But I chose to believe you when you spoke of integrity, of wanting to do good. I chose to believe in the woman you presented yourself to be. I then turned to the security guards. Please escort Miss Sterling to her office. Allow her to collect her personal belongings, then ensure she is removed from the building immediately. You can't fire me, she shrieked, finding her voice again, though it was now laced with panic. I'm a vice president. I have a contract. I looked at her, my expression hard. Grounds for termination? I asked, a rhetorical question. Hostile work environment, public harassment, corporate espionage, financial fraud. Take your pick, Olivia. There are plenty of options. The media explosion that followed was unprecedented. Haven Capital scandal rocks financial district, screamed headlines. Tech billionaire reveals secret ownership in dramatic boardroom coup. Within days, the story took another sensational turn. Haven VP caught with pants down in company apartment. It turned out Brendan Keller, Arthur's loyal lieutenant, had been having an affair with Olivia, using a company apartment for their trysts. He, eager to save himself, turned state's evidence, not only confirming his affair with Olivia, but also pinning the initiation of it and the expansion of the fraud scheme squarely on her. Sophia, now busy dismantling Arthur's empire from within, sent me a series of screenshots. They were messages between Olivia and Arthur, casually discussing the fraud. T still has no idea, Olivia's message read, followed by Arthur's reply. Good. I've got Carter working on a new shell company in Singapore. We'll divert funds there. T was undoubtedly me, Ethan. Federal agents swarmed Haven Capital, shutting down operations for a thorough investigation. Arthur Blackburn was arrested at JFK, attempting to flee the country with a briefcase full of cash. Olivia Sterling was apprehended in a high-end yoga class, mid-downward dog. I visited Olivia in detention a few days later. She was a shadow of her former self, disheveled, her hair stringy, her face pale and devoid of makeup. She wore an orange jumpsuit, its coarse fabric a stark contrast to the designer silks she once favored. Why are you here? She asked, her voice flat, hollow. To get answers, I replied, my voice equally flat. Enjoying your revenge? She sneered, a flicker of her old bitterness returning. No, I said truthfully, there's no enjoyment in this. I watched her for a long moment, then asked, Why, Olivia? Why wasn't it ever enough? She looked down at her clasped hands, her shoulders slumping. It was never enough, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I grew up with nothing. I had to fight for everything. I wanted to take what I deserved. She looked up, her eyes holding a desperate plea. Our relationship, Ethan, it was real at first. But then I realized you kept secrets. You never fully trusted me. It changed things. The divorce papers are filed, I told her, cutting through her narrative. They're just awaiting your signature. Ethan, please, she begged, tears welling in her eyes again. Can you help me with the prosecutors? You have so much influence. I'll consider it, I said, a flicker of something in my voice. If you actually come clean, Olivia, tell the truth, all of it, without spin or blame. She paused, then looked at me, a desperate hope in her eyes. Ethan, is there any chance for us? No, I cut her off, the word firm, absolute. That's over, completely and forever. Your way isn't love, Olivia, it's ownership. There's a difference. Haven Capital, under Sophia's capable leadership, was quickly rebranded as Vance Capital Solutions. My name was now front and center, a symbol of its new direction, its new integrity. I walked out of that detention center, leaving Olivia behind, and I never looked back. The heavy door of the detention center clicked shut behind me, the dull thud echoing the finality of the conversation I had just had with Olivia. Her desperate pleas, her thinly veiled attempts to manipulate, they no longer held any sway. There was no joy in seeing her so utterly broken, but there was a quiet resolution. The weight of the secret, of the charade, of the eroded trust had finally lifted. Olivia was right about one thing. It had never been enough for her. And for me, her desire for ownership was the antithesis of love. In the days and weeks that followed, my focus was absolute. Vance Capital Solutions was more than just a rebranded company. It was a testament to what finance could be, rather than what it had become. The media firestorm surrounding the Haven Capital scandal slowly began to subside, replaced by reports of the ongoing investigations and arrests. Arthur Blackburn's assets were frozen, and he faced a litany of charges. Brendan Keller, having turned state's evidence, received a lighter sentence, but was ostracized from the industry. Olivia's case was more complex, compounded by Brendan's testimony and the damning messages Sophia had uncovered. She faced serious fraud charges, her professional future, and indeed her freedom, hanging precariously in the balance. I had kept my word. I would consider helping her only if she was entirely truthful, but her initial interviews with prosecutors suggested she was still trying to spin her narrative. Back at Vance Capital Solutions, Sophia Hayes was proving to be an exceptionally capable leader. The initial skepticism from some of the older board members had quickly given way to respect, then admiration. She navigated the internal chaos with a calm competence, swiftly rooting out any remaining vestiges of Arthur's corrupt network. Her ethical stance was unwavering, and she had an innate ability to inspire trust among the remaining loyal employees and attract new talent who were drawn to the company's renewed mission. Under her leadership, the firm moved quickly to implement new transparency protocols, rebuilding client confidence brick by painstaking brick. We launched a new initiative specifically designed to fund and mentor promising local tech startups, mirroring my own origins with Orion Tech. It was a tangible demonstration that Vance Capital Solutions was committed to genuine innovation and community growth, not just predatory profits. My days were now consumed with Vance Ventures, my primary holding company, and guiding Sophia's strategic vision for Vance Capital Solutions. I found a profound sense of purpose in cultivating a business ecosystem where integrity was paramount. The freedom from constantly performing, from maintaining the facade of Olivia's husband, was exhilarating. I spent my mornings at Vance Ventures headquarters, diving into new tech ventures, nurturing the next generation of innovators. In the afternoons, I would often join Sophia at Vance Capital Solutions, engaging in high-level strategy sessions, ensuring our new path was clear and sustainable. Sophia and I developed a robust professional relationship built on a bedrock of mutual respect and absolute trust. She was brilliant, driven, and shared my core values. There was no romantic tension, no hint of the fabricated affair Olivia had shrieked about. Our connection was purely intellectual, a shared vision for ethical business. Her leadership allowed me to step back from the operational minutiae, focusing on the broader strategic direction, knowing the company was in immensely capable hands. She truly was the best person for the job, a quiet force who embodied the very integrity Arthur had so brazenly violated. Yet, even with the immense professional satisfaction and the quiet reclaiming of my identity, the lingering scars of the betrayal ran deep. Trust, once freely given, now felt like a precious commodity to be earned over years, not months. The idea of forming new personal connections, of allowing someone into my inner world, seemed daunting. My marriage to Olivia had been a grand experiment in vulnerability, an attempt to find love and partnership without the influence of my wealth. It had failed spectacularly, leaving me wary. The truth was, Olivia had never loved Ethan Vance. She had loved the idea of him, the potential he represented for her career, and the financial security he offered. The moment that security was threatened, her true colors had shown. As the official rebranding of Haven Capital to Vance Capital Solutions was formally announced to the public, a wave of relief and renewed optimism swept through the financial district. The scandal had been a dark cloud, but the swift, decisive action and the clear commitment to ethics presented a beacon of hope. My name, once deliberately kept in the shadows, was now proudly displayed on the company's new logo, a symbol of a fresh start. It represented not just my ownership, but the values I intended to instill. I had come full circle, from the quiet millionaire who bought a company for love, to the publicly humiliated loser, to the executive reclaiming his name and his vision. The path had been painful, filled with disillusionment and betrayal. but it had ultimately led to a clarity I hadn't realized I was missing. The pretense was gone. The masks were off. I was simply Ethan Vance. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt like enough. The road ahead would be challenging, but it would be walked with integrity, purpose, and a profound understanding of the difference between love and ownership. My past was a lesson, my future, a testament to resilience. With Vance Capital Solutions firmly established and its ethical foundations restored, my role shifted from crisis management to strategic growth. I spent my days exploring new avenues for expansion, identifying companies that aligned with our revitalized mission of supporting genuine innovation and community impact. The market, initially wary after the scandal, was now responding positively to our transparent approach and solid financial performance under Sophia's leadership. The rebranding had resonated, and clients were returning, drawn by the promise of integrity in a sector often plagued by opacity. Sophia, now officially confirmed as CEO after her 6-month interim period, was a force of nature. She handled the day-to-day operations with an acumen that constantly impressed me. Her ability to inspire her team, to streamline processes, and to meticulously oversee our investment portfolio was exceptional. She had an intuitive grasp of the financial markets, coupled with an unshakable moral compass that ensured every decision aligned with our core values. Our professional partnership deepened further, built on an unspoken understanding and a profound mutual respect. We were a formidable team, each bringing complementary strengths to the table, united by a shared vision for what Vance Capital Solutions could achieve. The company's success began to attract positive media attention, a welcome shift from the sensational headlines that had once dominated the news cycles. Articles highlighted Vance Capital's rapid turnaround, praising its commitment to ethical investment and its positive impact on the local economy. We were becoming a symbol of hope, a testament that profit and principle were not mutually exclusive. This positive press further cemented our new identity, successfully distancing the firm from the shadow of Arthur Blackburn's corruption and Olivia's desperate misdeeds. The scandal, while a painful chapter, was slowly receding into the background, a cautionary tale rather than a defining characteristic. For me, this period brought a profound sense of peace and authenticity that I hadn't realized I was missing for so long. The daily requirement to play a part, to suppress my true capabilities and wealth, had been a subtle, constant drain on my energy. Now I could simply be on. I found immense satisfaction in aligning my professional life with my deepest values, building something genuinely good and impactful. My mornings were still dedicated to Vance Ventures, nurturing the seeds of future innovations, but my afternoons became more flexible. I started rediscovering old hobbies I had set aside, like painting and long-distance running, finding a meditative calm in these personal pursuits. The absence of Olivia and the corporate charades that had defined our shared life brought a quiet contentment. There was no longer any need to manage her expectations, to temper my successes, or to navigate the complex emotional landscape of our increasingly fractured relationship. The penthouse, now truly mine, felt less like a gilded cage and more like a tranquil retreat. It was a space I could inhabit authentically, without pretense or performance. I often reflected on the concept of authenticity, on the cost of living a life built on half-truths, even when those truths were initially concealed for what I perceived as noble reasons. While my intentions with Olivia had been pure, to support her dreams without the distorting influence of my wealth, the secrecy had ultimately created a rift that, combined with her own inherent ambition and entitlement, had become an unbridgeable chasm. The lesson was clear. True connection, true partnership, could only thrive in the light of honesty, however uncomfortable that light might be. Vance Capital Solutions was not just surviving, it was thriving. Its new headquarters buzzed with a renewed energy, its employees driven by a sense of shared purpose. We were attracting top talent, people who genuinely believed in our mission, not just the bottom line. The company's expansion into new markets was strategic and ethical, always prioritizing long-term value and positive impact over short-term gains. It was a stark contrast to the hollow ambition that had once defined Haven Capital under Arthur's corrupt leadership. Looking out from my office at Vance Ventures, the city lights shimmering below, I felt a quiet optimism for the future. Life had a way of presenting challenges, but also of offering profound opportunities for growth and self-discovery. The subtle shifts, the quiet observations, the moments of stark realization, these were the crucibles in which true change was forged. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value integrity above all else, and to recognize that true power lay not in hidden wealth, but in authentic leadership and unwavering values. The journey had been arduous, but I had emerged not merely as a billionaire tech mogul, but as Ethan Vance, a man finally at peace with his true self and his purpose in the world. Months had passed since the dramatic unraveling of my marriage and the corporate coup at Haven Capital. Vance Capital Solutions was not merely a phoenix rising from the ashes. It was soaring, having established itself as a beacon of ethical finance. It was time for a more public reemergence, not just for the company, but for Ethan Vance. I accepted an invitation to deliver a keynote address at a high-profile industry conference, a gathering of the brightest minds in finance and technology. The conference hall was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. As I walked onto the stage, the applause was genuinely enthusiastic, a far cry from the polite, often insincere claps I'd received as Olivia's husband. My address focused on ethical innovation, the imperative of integrating social responsibility with financial growth, and the transformative power of transparency. I shared insights from my journey, carefully omitting the personal drama, but emphasizing the profound lessons learned about integrity and purpose. The reception was overwhelming. My message resonated deeply with the audience, sparking a lively Q&A session where genuine curiosity replaced forced small talk. It was invigorating to engage with people who were truly interested in substance, not just superficial networking. Sophia Hayes accompanied me to the conference, representing Vance Capital Solutions with her usual grace and sharp intellect. Her presence further solidified our partnership, both professionally and publicly. During networking breaks, we moved through the crowds, Sophia fielding questions about the company's new initiatives while I engaged in deeper conversations, feeling a genuine connection with many attendees. It was a stark contrast to the hollow interactions of the Grand Sterling Gala, a world away from the suffocating pretense of my past. Of course, not every interaction was entirely smooth. During a brief interview with a tenacious financial journalist, the inevitable question about the Haven Capital scandal arose. "Mr. Vance," she began, her tone probing, "many still remember the dramatic circumstances surrounding your acquisition of Haven Capital and the subsequent legal fallout. How do you respond to those who still view your actions as a form of elaborate personal revenge?" I met her gaze evenly, a slight smile on my face. "I understand why some might perceive it that way," I replied, my voice calm and measured. "But my actions were never about revenge. They were about accountability and rebuilding. Haven Capital had drifted far from its ethical core, and its leadership was actively engaged in fraudulent activities. As its majority owner, I had a responsibility to its employees, its clients, and the financial community to rectify that. What you see today in Vance Capital Solutions is not an act of vengeance, but a commitment to a new standard of integrity and responsible growth. We are focused on the future, on demonstrating that ethical business is not just possible, but profitable." The journalist, visibly impressed by the sincerity and substance of my response, nodded and moved on. Later that evening at a private dinner hosted for key speakers and industry leaders, amidst the subdued clinking of cutlery and murmured conversations, I noticed a familiar face across the room. She was engaged in an animated discussion, her laughter light and genuine. Dr. Evelyn Reed. I knew her, casually, from years ago, during the early days of Orion Tech. She was a brilliant neuroscientist, a pioneer in her field, renowned for her groundbreaking research into cognitive function. Our paths had diverged dramatically, but I distinctly remembered her warmth, her sharp wit, and a quiet intensity that had always intrigued me. Our eyes met across the room, a flicker of recognition, then a genuine smile. She excused herself from her conversation and made her way over, her presence radiating a quiet confidence. "Ethan Vance," she said, extending her hand, her grip firm and warm. "It's been a long time. I almost didn't recognize you without a tech prototype glued to your hand." Her teasing humor was instantly familiar. "Evelyn, Swa," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face, a smile that reached my eyes. "It's good to see you. I've followed your work. It's truly remarkable." We spoke for a long time, the conversation flowing easily, naturally. We talked about science, about technology, about the challenges of fostering innovation, about the broader impact of our work on society. There was no pretense, no forced corporate jargon, just honest intellectual engagement and a shared passion for making a difference. I found myself drawn to her clarity of thought, her compassionate intelligence, and the refreshing absence of any professional posturing. She seemed to see me, truly see me, as Ethan Vance, not as a label, not as a symbol, not as Olivia's husband, or even the billionaire CEO. As the evening wound down and we exchanged contact information, a tentative hope began to bloom within me. The past year had been a crucible, stripping away everything false, leaving behind a raw, authentic self. And in that raw authenticity, perhaps lay the possibility of genuine connection. My professional life was thriving, built on the solid ground of integrity and purpose. Now perhaps my personal life could begin to heal, to rebuild, to find a balance between ambition and affection. This unexpected reunion with Evelyn, a woman from a different chapter of my life, felt like a quiet, hopeful beginning to a new chapter, one where honesty and true connection might finally flourish, far from the deception and betrayal of the past. The unexpected encounter with Dr. Evelyn Reed at the conference opened a new tentative chapter in my life. Our initial exchange of numbers quickly evolved into a series of casual coffee dates, then longer dinners, and eventually weekend hikes in the scenic trails upstate. There was a refreshing ease to our interactions, a natural flow to our conversations that I hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. Our discussions effortlessly spanned from the intricacies of quantum computing to the beauty of a perfectly executed sourdough loaf, from the ethics of AI development to the simple pleasure of a quiet evening spent reading. What truly captivated me about Evelyn was her genuine curiosity, not just about my work, but about me as a person. She listened intently, her intelligent eyes alight with interest, asking thoughtful questions that went beyond the superficial. She saw Ethan, the man who loved to build things, who harbored a quiet idealism, who found solace in strategy and purpose. My wealth, my reputation, my recent dramatic public story, none of it seemed to define me in her eyes. It was a stark contrast to Olivia, who had always seemed to see me through the lens of my utility, my potential to enhance her own ambitions. Cautiously, tentatively, I began to share aspects of my past with Evelyn. I spoke of the early days of Orion Tech, the thrill of creation, and then, slowly, of my marriage to Olivia. I recounted the years of quiet support, the hidden ownership of Haven Capital, the disillusionment, and finally the public unraveling. It wasn't a narrative of bitterness or resentment, but a candid reflection on choices made, lessons learned, and the painful process of confronting betrayal. Evelyn listened with an unwavering empathy, her presence a calming anchor. She offered insights and perspectives that were astute and compassionate, never judgmental. She understood the complexities of human motivation, the allure of ambition, and the profound hurt that comes from broken trust. Her understanding wasn't just intellectual, it felt deeply resonant, as if she truly grasped the emotional landscape I had navigated. This authenticity was the bedrock of our developing bond. There were no games, no pretense, no hidden agendas. With Evelyn, I could simply be myself, flaws and all, without fear of judgment or manipulation. It was a sensation of profound relief, a stark and welcome contrast to the performative nature of my previous relationship. She, in turn, shared her own experiences, her challenges in the male-dominated world of neuroscience, the sacrifices she had made for her research, and the moments of doubt and triumph that shaped her journey. Her resilience, her integrity, and her quiet strength were qualities I admired deeply. I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't thought possible since the collapse of my marriage. A growing sense of trust began to blossom, slowly but surely, replacing the profound cynicism that had taken root after Olivia's betrayal. I felt a renewed capacity for vulnerability, a willingness to share my deeper thoughts and feelings, knowing they would be met with understanding and respect. It was a powerful healing process, gentle and steady, proving to me that genuine connection was indeed possible after such a profound hurt. Evelyn became a grounding force in my life, a source of quiet strength and intelligent companionship. We supported each other's professional ambitions, celebrating successes and offering solace during challenges. She understood my dedication to Vance Ventures and Vance Capital Solutions, and I, in turn, admired her unwavering commitment to her scientific research, which she pursued with an almost spiritual fervor. But beyond our professional lives, we cherished the simpler, shared moments, cooking together in my penthouse kitchen, exploring art galleries, or simply enjoying the silence of a shared sunrise over the city. The journey from the grand Sterling Gala, from the crushing weight of public humiliation and private betrayal, had been long and arduous, but it had led me here to a place of greater authenticity, purpose, and, unexpectedly, to the quiet, unfolding promise of a relationship built on true connection. The world of corporate masquerades and hidden identities felt like a distant, faded memory. With Evelyn, there was no need for pretense, no need for elaborate charades. There was just Ethan and Evelyn building something new, something real together. It was a gentle, steady path forward, away from the shadows of the past and towards the future filled with genuine hope and shared understanding. Months melted into a year, and the legal repercussions for Arthur Blackburn and Olivia Sterling finally reached their conclusion. The trials were long, drawn-out affairs, meticulously covered by the media, which by now had shifted its focus from sensationalism to the details of corporate justice. Arthur, facing a mountain of irrefutable evidence provided by Sophia Hayes and Brendan Keller, was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. He received a lengthy prison sentence, effectively ending his career and stripping him of his ill-gotten gains. His arrogance, once his defining characteristic, had evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, defeated man. Olivia's fate, while distinct from Arthur's, was no less severe. Despite her claims of ignorance regarding the full extent of the fraud, Brendan Keller's testimony, coupled with the damning messages Sophia had uncovered, painted a clear picture of her knowing participation in aspects of the scheme and her deliberate cover-up. The prosecution successfully argued that her continued deception, even after my confrontation, and her lack of genuine remorse, warranted a significant penalty. She was found guilty of several counts related to financial fraud and corporate espionage. The judge, citing her position of trust and the damage inflicted on the company, sentenced her to a considerable prison term and imposed hefty financial penalties. The public perception of Olivia had undergone a complete reversal. She was no longer seen as an ambitious professional tragically caught in a scandal, but rather as a culpable participant, her downfall largely self-inflicted. I followed the news from a distance, the reports often appearing on my tablet as I sipped coffee in my office or shared a quiet dinner with Evelyn. When asked by journalists for a comment on Olivia's sentencing, I politely declined. There was nothing more to say. The justice system had run its course, and while the emotional scars of the betrayal would always remain, the raw wound had finally begun to close. My journey was about moving forward, not dwelling in the past. Vance Capital Solutions, under Sophia's exceptional leadership, continued to thrive. The company had not only recovered from the scandal, but had emerged stronger, more reputable, and more profitable than ever before. Its ethical investment portfolio expanded rapidly, attracting a new generation of clients who valued responsible finance. Sophia had fostered a culture of integrity and innovation, proving that a company could achieve extraordinary success without compromising its values.